Good afternoon. This is Dr. Choi MD, PhD from South Korea. As a psychiatrist who is specialized in group dynamics and mass psychology, especially on international interactions and propaganda techniques, I have some different views when looking into the most current public attention-focused issues, such as using terms like Russia's special military operation against Ukraine, instead of which in fact is an unprovoked war and a massive violence. Sometimes words like emergency actions or insurgencies are substituted for this inhuman word, war. In the last video, I mentioned the next episode title will be Ukraine might lose the oncoming battle. If not, the Western Europe makes a shift organized move deep into the Ukraine territory proper. History repeats itself. Let's look into the substantial first bona fide World War II battlefield in Europe. Many of you might remember, especially the Polish people, will be the most swift to respond to this incident. The battlefield of Westerplatte in Deutsch, Westerplatte, but 1st to 7th September 1939. A brave Polish stand which could not help but to capitulate to its enemy in spite of the continuing victory over the overwhelming invaders to seize the area of Westerplatte. It was a successful triumph, turned out to be a sorrowful tragedy of surrendering. They lost hope when the Allies could not respond. Although the United States and the British training and ground troop equipment provision and much information warfare sharing were very critical and helpful for the Ukraine to fight against the Russians. But I hope the Ukraine do not meet this same destiny with the soldiers in the Westerplatte of Poland. More the Ukraine war continues, it will more be likely to fall unless the West show manifest determinations and active intervention, while intimidated by a bully of nuclear war. You are all cowards who will regret after it's too late to reverse the situation. Zelensky's Ukraine government can't surrender, but the Ukraine people will not. The Ukraine people will want to save their lives, but they will never surrender. Russia's only choice is to continue the war till the whole Ukraine territory becomes a pile of rubble. Then the Russian army will take a chance of a blitzkrieg through the vast open corridor as you see in the map. As seen in the map with the courtesy of Google Earth, this inevitable chicken game was caused by and influenced by the betrayal, kind of a betrayal by the Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko, who fears the accompanied twin collapse of both Belarus and Russia, if he continues to involve in this conflict. Vladimir Putin is never afraid and very stubborn. But if Alexander Lukashenko relies on his long-term autocrat dictatorship, he might end up like Romania's Nicolae Ceausescu in the Christmas day of 1989. As are the circumstances, the front, as you all realize, will be concentrated in the eastern Ukraine. As a matter of fact, it would be easier for the Russians to perform a blitzkrieg attack through the plains which lies between Zaporizhia and the countless numbers of tanks and armored units will collapse between the Russian army and the Ukrainian army. Ukraine armored units may be left about 1,100 remaining. Ukrainian tanks will collide with the Russian army. I do not know the number, how much the armament will be. And this will be the most large-scale tank-to-tank battle exceeding that of the Syrian and Israel battle at the Golan Heights. One who wins the battle will also win the war. But the cost of the Ukrainians in the past periods will be so much devastating. Before this historic battle starts, this tank battle starts, there will occur a Japanese imperial-style banzai charge attack by the desperately besieged soldiers in the Donbass and Mariupol areas to break through this siege, and there will be no more capitulations, as 1,000 Ukrainian Marines did before, because surrendering to the Russians do not mean surviving from death. Because surrendering to the Russians do not mean surviving from death, but living under humiliating torture. If the Ukraine lose, whether by surrender or whether by defeat, this will be another West Germany occupation by the Soviets, and Ukraine Kiev, the ground zero Berlin, East Berlin of 1945. I know this by the Korean War of June 1950, when South Korea was invaded by the North Korea's surprise attack. Foreign reinforcements came in as fast as possible. Most of all, the air supremacy. And the command of air was the foundation of the defense of the critical initial phase of the Korean War. Then there are the Ukraine Air Force. Then where are the Ukraine Air Forces now? Ukraine tanks will become a prey to Russian air bombing through numerous Russian airplane bombings. If there is no powerful air superiority for Ukraine, the results are obvious. Korea looked like this. Focus on the 38th parallel, a straight line divided by by the Soviets, who invaded into Manchuria just 3 days after the Japanese military stronghold Hiroshima was evaporated by an atomic bomb. Greedily heading its snout towards Korean Peninsula, the Russians came down. The United States fought and won the Pacific War. Thus, Japan and Korea meant to be in the United States' control. But the Soviets rushed down. Soviets had no legitimacy to occupy Korea. But they did, and dividing Korea to half. Not wanting to be a highway robber, they stopped at the 38th parallel line to save its own face. But they had plans. Waiting for 5 years was no problem to the Soviets. While waiting for 5 years, since 1945, after 5 years, USSR armed North Korea with the most sophisticated army tens the strength of South Korea. Soviets occupied the North Korea, but coordinated the full-scale South Korean Peninsula annexation to be performed by its puppet communist regime in North Korea, Kim Il-sung's regime, after 5 years by their hands. Ukraine declared independence recently in 1991, but in 2014, annexation of Crimea was accomplished, and Russia awaits watchfully for another 6 years. Then they attempt an unprovoked, full-scale invasion into Ukraine. I hope that the Ukraine do not go through the same sufferings the Koreans experienced 72 years ago. I wish the Ukraine keeps its full independence and its territory ultimately. Slava Ukraina. Thank you for your listening. Thank you.